I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're exploring a fantastic book. It is called Chasing Phileas Fogg, 80 Days on the Borealis. It's written by a wonderful author. His name is Wiktor Moszczynski. And this captivating narrative takes us on a luxury cruise that promises adventure and self-discovery, but with a twist, questioning every aspect in life and survival, physically, financially, medically, and mentally. As the protagonists embark on what could be the last great adventure of their lives, they face not just the excitement of travel, but the profound reflections on what it truly means to enjoy life. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank our team at Prime 7 Media for helping us put him in the spotlight today. We ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his delightful book. The links are below this interview. Wiktor, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Great to see you, Logan.
This is such a compelling book. It's entertaining, it's philosophical, it helps people with their own personal life journeys of discovery. Tell us a little bit about the inspiration for it.
Well, initially, it was firstly, it was something we booked in the middle of the COVID pandemic as a sort of release from that period. It was to celebrate our 50th anniversary of our marriage. At the same time, it was the 150th anniversary of Jules Verne's book Around the World in 80 Days, which was one of my favorite books ever since I was a kid. And the journey we took 80 days around the world, across 3 oceans. We visited 5 continents, roughly following in the footsteps of Phileas Fogg, who was the hero of the fictional hero of Around the World in 80 Days. And it's just something that's brought my wife and myself together even more. And at the same time, it was a wonderful way of seeing the world.
Absolutely amazing. An 80-day long cruise is amazing, and you circumvented the world. You went around the world. Tell us a little bit about what you learned about the size and the beauty of our planet and all the different cultures.
Well, firstly, it was a wonderful way to travel. You don't suddenly turn up on a plane in a different civilization within a 4 or 5 hour trip. Because it took 80 days, we were served up with these wonderful places that we visited: Egypt, India, Japan, California, Mexico, South America. It was served to us on a platter, if you like. So we knew how far away it was. For instance, it took us 20 days to cross the Pacific Ocean. It gives you an idea of, not just how vast the world is, but also how much of it is water. And at the same time, how the different cultures, the amazing things we could learn, comparing India, for instance, and Japan. I mean, 2 totally different worlds. India full of color and noise and certain chaos, and a place like Japan very orderly, very people very self-controlled. A very safe place to be, and at the same time, both places were extremely beautiful, with wonderful sights like the Taj Mahal or seeing Mount Fuji in Tokyo.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I just returned from Tokyo area and did see Mount Fuji, and it is spectacular. And that was just one step along your voyages, which is amazing. And it was great that you got to do it with your wife of a half a century. You guys have been married 50 years?
Yes, yeah, yes. We were totally different people. I mean, it was very romantic. We knew each other about 3 weeks when we married. She was from Poland. I was from the Polish community in the UK. So we had different worlds completely. And there was a lot to, once we'd made the decision to go together, there were a lot of compromises, a lot of different aspects to, we had totally different personalities, different interests, but we still made it work. I mean, obviously, the key thing is to make sure that all the main decisions you agree on, which basically means my wife makes them and I agree, and on all the other things, we have space to follow our own interests, our own our own world, and in my case, my community work with particularly in with the Polish community in London.
And that's your background. You come from the Polish community in the UK, which I'm not
Yeah,
aware of. It's an
yeah,
extensive
yes.
community.
Yeah, we're a bit more than 1 million strong. We the first settled here as Polish soldiers who'd fought alongside the British Army in the Second World War, and couldn't return to what was then communist Poland. And we're now, I'm sort of second generation, but now it's the third generation Poles, plus the Poles who came here after Poland joined the European Union, and Poles came here with the right to work and to settle and set up families. And at one stage, we were the second most common language in the UK after English.
Amazing, amazing. How did your trip compare to Phileas Fogg's trip all those, years ago?
Yeah, it's something I covered actually in a lecture on the vessel, because it was the Phileas Fogg trip was in 1872. And that was a sort of great discovery. This is after Suez was opened, after the rail links in India, in the USA, and his trip was partly by rail across Europe, across India, across the United States. But for the rest of it, it was by sea, and we largely copied that route, although we were traveled by sea all the way.
Mm.
But certainly from Italy to San Francisco, the route was more or less the same, except we had one or two extra stops like Vietnam and Hawaii. But of course, he traveled in a very safe world, which was at the time safe for him as Europeans because it was largely British Empire or Japan or the United States. Basically, he basically went through three countries in a sense, whereas with the British Empire. But now, of course, it's all different. Again, we had a very safe journey, but I had very much of a premonition, and in fact, I covered this in my lecture, in that I said that we were actually traveling through a very brittle world. For instance, we traveled through the Red Sea.
Mhm.
Well, within 6 months of our travel there, we had piracy again. Then we had the Houthi again attacking Houthi rebels attacking ships in the Red Sea, blocking the routes there. We had the confrontations in the South China Sea and the East China Sea over Taiwan and the islands in the south between Vietnam and the Philippines and America. At the same time, with the climatic changes, we had fires like the fire in Lahaina in Hawaii, where more than 100 people were killed. We were one of the last to see Lahaina still as a working community. Acapulco was dreadful, again, fires and storms. Panama Canal with the water shortage of water. The changes, both because of war and the climatic change, means that it's a very fragile world, even though it's also a very beautiful world, and we were lucky to see it when we did.
Amazing, amazing all of the changes that have transpired since you took that trip. And that does go to show just how fragile our world is. What's it like going on a cruise, particularly a cruise this long, for people who might be older, people who might have physical challenges? Tell us about that.
Well, the ship, I mean, we had traveled on the Fred Olsen ship, Borealis, and it's very well prepared for that. There's not a single part in the vessel which isn't accessible by with people on wheelchairs. They are open to special facilities for in the gym and in the restaurants for people like us, for elderly people. In my case, I'm 77, and I had probably an average age of those who were there. But the important thing is also not just the vessel, but the coach trips. They were adequate also, and people were able to travel as well with all sorts of disabilities. People who could communicate only by pressing their nose against a computer, for instance, and so on. We were able to travel, and obviously helpful staff, but also we were all very helpful to each other and very much aware that many of the people, some of them in their 90s, were still there to enjoy life to the full and to share it with us.
Amazing. Well, it's wonderful. That is a great option for travelers who do have physical challenges, who are older, who might have mobility issues. It's great that there are accommodations for those travelers and able to have such an exciting adventure at an advanced age
Absolutely.
to navigate the world. Um,
Absolutely.
One of the things I teased at the beginning of the show was reflections on what it truly means to enjoy life. Do you have any thoughts on that as we leave you today?
Well, I'd say, firstly, you have somebody to share it with. That's
Mm.
also important, even though she spent a lot of the time largely sunbathing or in the cabin, whereas I spent a lot of it, more active on the vessel. But nevertheless, we could share we could watch films together. I could share what I'd experienced with her as well. And also, I thought the very fact that I was able to write a blog and to keep going, and therefore on the strength of that I wrote the book, that actually means that I can memory, because memory is so important, is to remember all the great things that happen in your life, and particularly something like this journey. So by writing about it, I can not only share it with others but remind myself as well of all those wonderful things that we went through together.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's a wonderful book. It's a wonderful adventure. We're glad you documented it. It'll inspire people to make their own adventures as well. This book is called Chasing Phileas Fogg, 80 Days on the Borealis. It is an amazing story. It's a real life story. And like I said, it's part memoir, part philosophy. It's a terrific read.
Oh,
Thank you so
and a
much.
travel book.
And a travel book, of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
And travel book. Victor, thank you so much for joining us here today on
my
Spotlight.
pleasure.
Pleasure's all
Thank you very
mine.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.